Picture walking through your local grocery store, filling your cart with vibrant apples, juicy oranges, and exotic kiwis. It's remarkable to think that these everyday fruits have traveled incredible distances, not just physically from farm to shelf, but through time and across continents, carrying with them stories of ancient civilizations, medieval monasteries, and the evolution of human agriculture. For our earliest ancestors, fruits weren't just delicious treats, they were essential survival foods. These naturally sweet, energy-dense packages could be gathered and consumed without cooking or preparation. Some scientists even theorized that our ability to distinguish between red and green hues evolved specifically to help us identify ripe fruits, giving us a crucial evolutionary advantage in locating these precious food sources. Today, of course, finding fruit is as simple as visiting the produce aisle, but few of us pause to consider the remarkable journeys these fruits have taken to reach us. Many of our favorite fruits originated in landscapes and climates vastly different from where they're now grown commercially, thousands of miles from our modern supermarkets. Let's embark on a fascinating exploration of where our fruits truly come from, and discover how medieval societies cultivated, preserved, and treasured these same crops centuries ago. Apples, from ancient forests to medieval orchards. Our story begins with apples, which trace their ancestry to the mountainous regions of Central Asia, specifically where China, Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyzstan converge today. The wild ancestor, Malus sieversii, still thrives throughout this region, and China continues to dominate global production, accounting for 48% of all apples grown worldwide. In medieval Europe, apples held a position of extraordinary importance. Medieval orchards featured varieties with names long forgotten, Gosmaringa and Geraldinga among them, cultivated by monks who understood that apples could be stored through winter and transformed into cider and perry, essential beverages when clean water was scarce. The medieval apple variety, Coeur de Boeuf, was particularly prized for its keeping qualities, lasting until early spring when fresh food was desperately needed. Monastic orchards served dual purposes in medieval times, not only as sources of fruit, but also as cemeteries, with apple and pear trees growing over graves, providing both practical food production and spiritual symbolism. The tree's annual cycle of dormancy, budding, flowering, and fruiting was seen as a metaphor for resurrection and eternal life. Apricots, ancient Armenian heritage. Apricots carry their origins in their very name, Prunus armeniaca, literally referencing ancient Armenia. While some scholars debate whether they truly originated there, with India and China also being suggested, their theoretical range encompasses all these regions. Archaeological evidence shows that apricots were cultivated along the Silk Road over a millennium ago, with preserved pits found at medieval sites in the Pamir Mountains of Uzbekistan. Today, Uzbekistan remains the world's top producer. During the medieval period, apricots were among the exotic fruits that traveled the extensive trade routes connecting east and west. Historical sources document the importance of fresh and dried fruits, including apricots, as valuable trade goods at market bazaars across Inner Asia. Medieval physicians valued apricots not just as food but as medicine, believing their sweet flesh could balance the body's humors and aid digestion. Avocados, ancient Mexican treasures. The avocado, sometimes called the alligator pear for obvious reasons, originated in south-central Mexico's Tehuacan Valley. Archaeological evidence reveals that local populations have been consuming avocado ancestors for up to 10,000 years. Mexico maintains its historical dominance, remaining the world's largest producer today. Interestingly, avocados were unknown to medieval Europe, as they wouldn't reach the Old World until Spanish conquistadors encountered them in the 16th century. This reminds us that medieval European diets, while rich in many fruits, lacked the incredible diversity we enjoy today. Bananas, ancient cultivation in the Pacific. Bananas and plantains, which are technically berries, botanically speaking, began their journey in the Indo-Malaya region. The earliest evidence of their domestication comes from New Guinea approximately 10,000 years ago. Despite this Pacific origin, India currently leads global production, with China close behind. Like avocados, bananas remained unknown to medieval Europeans. The absence of these now ubiquitous fruits underscores how dramatically our modern fruit selection differs from medieval diets, which relied primarily on locally grown temperate fruits. Blueberries, North American natives. The Vaccinium genus, which includes blueberries, naturally occurs throughout the circumpolar regions of the north. However, the blueberries we consume today originated specifically in North America, particularly in the northern and eastern United States and south-central Canada. Naturally, the United States leads global production, with Canada following closely. Medieval Europeans enjoyed similar berries, wild strawberries, blackberries, and other forest berries, but the large, cultivated blueberries we know today would not reach Europe until much later periods of exploration and trade. Cantaloupes, ancient Persian mysteries. Cantaloupes derive their name from the Italian town Cantalupo di Sabina, which amusingly translates to howling wolf, though they certainly didn't originate there. The true origins remain somewhat mysterious, with various theories pointing to Persia, Afghanistan, or Armenia. The Romans definitely ate cantaloupes, and Arabs were instrumental in introducing various melon types to medieval Spain. Today, China dominates production with 51% of the global harvest. Medieval references indicate that the domesticated watermelons and melons of that era were often quite different from modern varieties. Historical accounts suggest many were rather tasteless compared to today's sweet cultivars. Medieval physicians held complex views about melons, considering them potentially problematic for digestion while acknowledging their cooling properties during hot weather. Cherries, European origins, and Turkish dominance. Cherries are native to Italy and Central Europe more broadly. The word cherry itself tells a tale of ancient trade routes, derived from Norman charis, Latin cerasus, and ultimately from the ancient Greek region Karasus in Turkey, where cherries were first imported into Europe. Turkey continues this ancient legacy, remaining the world's top producer of sweet cherries. Medieval European orchards commonly included cherry trees, and the Romans had already introduced Asian cherry varieties to Europe, expanding the diversity available to medieval cultivators. In Prague, King Charles IV established cherry orchards in the royal garden during the 14th century, contributing to a tradition that made Czech cherries renowned throughout the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Medieval cherry festivals became grand celebrations attracting visitors from across Europe. Clementines, a modern Algerian innovation. Clementines represent a relatively recent addition to our fruit repertoire. This hybrid between a mandarin orange and sweet orange spontaneously occurred in the late 1800s in the garden of an orphanage in Missergin, Algeria. The hybrid was observed by Marie Clément Rodiers, the French orphanage director whose name gave us Clementine. China now leads global production. The clementine's recent origin highlights how fruit development continued long after the medieval period, with new varieties still appearing through both natural hybridization and human cultivation efforts. Coconuts, dual ocean origins. Coconuts present a unique case of dual domestication. Their ability to float and survive in seawater allowed natural dispersal across tropical coastal regions. This wide distribution led to independent domestication events, once in the Indian Ocean, Sri Lanka and Maldives, and separately in the Pacific, Philippines, and Indonesia. Indonesia remains the leading producer today. Medieval Europeans knew of coconuts primarily through trade accounts and exotic imports, but they played no significant role in European medieval agriculture due to climate constraints. Cranberries, Native American heritage. Cranberries have deep roots in North American indigenous culture. Native American tribes, particularly the Narragansett, utilize cranberries both as food and natural dyes throughout the New England region. Recipes for cranberry sauce appeared in Pilgrim cookbooks as early as 1663. The United States naturally remains the top producer today. European settlers learned cranberry cultivation from Native Americans, but these berries remained unknown to medieval Europeans, who instead relied on other tart berries like elderberries and currants for similar culinary purposes. Dates, ancient Mesopotamian cultivation. Dates rank among humanity's oldest cultivated fruits, with origins traced to ancient Mesopotamian and Egyptian civilizations. The Romans imported dates from northern Africa and Syria for their cookery. Current evidence suggests dates originated in Iraq around 50 million years ago, while the earliest cultivation evidence comes from Pakistan around 7000 BCE. Egypt leads modern global production. Medieval European monasteries often imported dates as luxury items, particularly valued during religious fasting periods when their concentrated sweetness provided essential energy. Date palms occasionally grew in the warmest Mediterranean regions, but most European consumption relied on imported dried dates. Figs, humanity's possible first agriculture. Figs share similar geographical origins with dates but boast an even more ancient agricultural history. Evidence of fig cultivation and consumption reaches back 11,000 years, with findings in the ancient village of Gilgal in the Jordan Valley placing fig domestication around 9,400 BCE, potentially representing humanity's very first agricultural practice, predating wheat and rye by a millennium. Medieval Europeans continued the Roman tradition of enjoying figs, with the fruit appearing in both fresh and dried forms in monastic gardens and noble estates. Turkey, not far from those ancient origins, leads modern production. Grapefruits, Caribbean innovation. Grapefruits resulted from a spontaneous cross between Jamaican sweet oranges and Indonesian pomelos, occurring on the Caribbean island of Barbados. Originally called shaddocks, these fruits demonstrate how new varieties can emerge from chance hybridization in colonial botanical gardens. Despite their tropical island origins, China now produces 48% of all grapefruits globally. This modern citrus hybrid was unknown to medieval times, when Europeans were just beginning to encounter bitter oranges through Arabic trade connections. Grapes, the foundation of civilization. Grapes originated in the Middle East, where human agriculture first flourished. Their cultivation directly led to yeast domestication and wine production. It remains unclear whether grape cultivation or winemaking came first, but both emerged around 10,000 years ago in Georgia and Armenia. While China leads overall grape production, Spain dominates wine grape cultivation. Grapes held central importance in medieval European society. Wine was consumed daily throughout France and Mediterranean regions, considered safer and more nutritious than water. The Romans had introduced viticulture to northern regions like the Rhine and Moselle valleys, and medieval monasteries became centers of advanced viticultural knowledge. The Duchy of Aquitaine in France exemplified how grape cultivation could generate immense regional wealth, with vast vineyards and the medieval port of La Rochelle facilitating wine export throughout Europe. Guavas and papayas, Central American treasures. Both guavas and papayas originated in southern Mexico and Central America, sharing remarkably similar geographical ranges. These tropical fruits demonstrate the incredible diversity that developed in Mesoamerican regions. Today, India leads production of both fruits. Like many New World fruits, guavas and papayas remained completely unknown to medieval Europeans, representing entire categories of flavors and nutrients that wouldn't enter European diets until post-Columbian contact. Honeydew, North African origins. Honeydew melons originated in northern Africa, particularly around Algeria. Medieval Arabs were instrumental in introducing various melon varieties to Spain during the Middle Ages, expanding the range of melons available in medieval Europe. China currently dominates honeydew production. Medieval dietary theory held complex views about melons, with physicians often expressing wariness despite their popularity among patients. Melons were considered close to the earth and therefore less noble than tree fruits. Kiwis, Chinese origins, New Zealand fame. This might surprise many, but kiwis originated in China's Yangtze River Valley, not New Zealand. They weren't extensively cultivated in China initially. Only in the 20th century were kiwis brought to New Zealand and developed into commercial crops there before being exported to the US and UK, hence their association with New Zealand. Ironically, China has reclaimed dominance, now producing 55% of global kiwis, followed by Italy and then New Zealand. Medieval Chinese likely consumed wild kiwis, but they played no role in European medieval agriculture or diet. Kumquats, Southeast Asian miniatures. Kumquats, resembling tiny oranges about olive-sized, originated in Southeast Asia. Like many citrus fruits, they trace their ancestry to this biodiverse region that gave rise to numerous citrus varieties. Lemons. Indian hybrids reach medieval Europe. Lemons originated in eastern India's Assam state and represent a hybrid between bitter oranges and citrons. Lemons traveled from the Middle East along shipping routes to medieval Spain and northern Africa. They were among the first citrus fruits introduced to medieval Europe through Arabic connections. India continues to lead global production. Medieval European cookbooks increasingly featured lemons, particularly in the later medieval period when Arabic culinary influences grew stronger. However, medieval cooks worked primarily with bitter varieties rather than the sweet citrus we know today. Limes. Complex Southeast Asian origins. Limes present a taxonomic puzzle. Multiple different fruits are called limes, representing various combinations of citrons, mandarin oranges, and pomelos. All these parent species originated in Southeast Asia, making lime classification particularly complex. Mangoes. The pride of Southeast Asia. Mangoes also hail from Southeast Asia, joining the remarkable diversity of fruits that originated in this biogeographically rich region. Medieval Europeans remained unaware of mangoes, missing out on what many consider the king of tropical fruits. Olives, Mediterranean foundation. Olives naturally originated in Italy but quickly spread throughout the Mediterranean region. Archaeological evidence shows commercial olive cultivation on the Greek island of Crete as early as 5,000 years ago. Spain now leads global commercial production. Medieval European agriculture heavily depended on olives, particularly in southern regions. The Romans had cultivated 15 olive varieties, and medieval communities continued this tradition. Cultivation of olives in southern France expanded significantly during the 15th century. Medieval monasteries maintained olive groves both for food and lamp oil, with olives playing crucial roles in religious ceremonies and daily sustenance. Passion fruit, South American exclusivity. Passion fruit represents our first exclusively South American fruit, originating in southern Brazil through Paraguay into northern Argentina. This geographical distinctiveness highlights the unique evolutionary pathways that occurred in different continental regions. Peaches, Chinese mountain origins. Peaches originated in northwestern China between the Tarim Basin and Kunlun Mountains. Archaeological evidence shows peaches were present in the Mediterranean by the Classical period, having traveled along ancient trade routes. Medieval archaeological sites in the Pamir Mountains contain well-preserved peach pits, demonstrating their cultivation along the Silk Road over a millennium ago. China produces 58% of modern global peaches. Medieval European orchards commonly included peach trees introduced by the Romans from Asia. The Saint Gall monastery plan from around 830 specifically recommends peaches for monastic orchards, and medieval medical practitioners used peaches for treating wounds. Pears, Chinese foothills. Heritage pears originated nearby in western China in the Tian Shan mountain foothills, remarkably close to apple origins. Medieval European orchards invariably included pear varieties alongside apples. Both fruits were essential for making fermented beverages, perry from pears, cider from apples, when clean drinking water was unreliable. China continues dominating pear production. The Romans cultivated 41 pear varieties, and medieval Europeans inherited this diversity, developing new cultivars adapted to local climates and growing conditions. Pineapples, Brazilian and Paraguayan tropics. Pineapples originated in southern Brazil and Paraguay, sharing origins with passion fruit. Despite these South American roots, Costa Rica leads global production today, demonstrating how agricultural centers can shift dramatically from origins. Medieval Europeans never encountered pineapples, which remained exclusively New World fruits until post-Columbian contact. Plums, Caucasus Mountain origins. Plums were among humanity's earliest domesticated fruits, originating in the Caucasus Mountains of Eastern Europe. Medieval European orchards commonly featured plum varieties, and the Romans had cultivated 12 distinct plum types. The St. Gall monastery plan specifically recommended plums for monastic cultivation. Despite these European origins, China now produces 55% of global plums. Medieval Europeans made various fruit wines, including beverages from plums that survive today as modern slivovitz. Pomegranates, Persian symbolism and medicine. Pomegranates originated in Iran and carry such cultural significance that they possess an entire symbolism section on their Wikipedia page, testament to their importance in early civilizations. Iran remains the world's leading producer. While pomegranates were known to Romans and mentioned in medieval European texts, they were more often used symbolically in medieval Europe than as common food items. Medieval physicians valued them for their astringent properties and potential medicinal benefits. Raspberries, Turkish origins, Russian production. Raspberries spread throughout Europe so rapidly that pinpointing their exact origins proves challenging, though evidence points to Turkey. Red raspberries have been cultivated in Europe for over 400 years. Despite their likely Turkish origins, Russia leads modern global production. Medieval Europeans consumed various wild berries, including raspberries, both fresh and in fermented beverages. Berry wines and fermented drinks were common throughout medieval Europe. Strawberries, Franco-American hybrid. Modern strawberries represent a fascinating case of intercontinental hybridization. The medieval European strawberry was far inferior to modern varieties and was primarily used medicinally in 13th century France, treating diarrhea, digestive upset, gout, sunburn, and even as a tooth whitener. Our modern strawberry emerged from crossing North American Fragaria virginiana with Chilean Fragaria chiloensis in the 1750s, Brittany, France. The United States leads current production. Medieval monastic gardens grew strawberries alongside roses and lilies in cemetery orchards, where they served both practical and symbolic purposes. Tomatoes, Andean fruits, misunderstood as vegetables. Tomatoes are definitively fruits, despite culinary usage as vegetables. They originated in the Andes Mountains, thousands of miles from their association with Italian cuisine. Various legends surround their European introduction, whether through Columbus, Hernán Cortés, or Spanish Jesuits in Mexico, but consensus remains elusive. China leads modern production with 31% of global tomatoes. Medieval Europeans never encountered tomatoes, which wouldn't reach Europe until the 16th century and weren't widely accepted until even later due to fears about their safety. Watermelons, Ethiopian transformation. Watermelons began their journey looking quite different in East Africa around Ethiopia. Egyptian cultivation roughly 5,000 years ago gradually transformed them into recognizable modern watermelons. Medieval watermelons were often noted as being relatively tasteless compared to contemporary varieties. China currently accounts for 68% of worldwide watermelon production. Medieval Europeans knew watermelons through trade contacts, particularly via Arabic connections, but they remained relatively uncommon in Northern European diets. Medieval fruit culture and cultivation. Understanding medieval fruit cultivation reveals fascinating insights into how our ancestors lived, ate, and planned for survival. Medieval society held complex views about fruits. Since they grew on trees reaching toward heaven, fruits were considered the most noble of Earth's produce, particularly suitable for elite digestion alongside poultry and birds. Medieval fruit preservation differed dramatically from modern methods. Without sugar for jam making, honey being their only sweetener and relatively scarce, most fruits were consumed fresh, dried, or fermented into alcoholic beverages. The inability to preserve fruits as we do today made fresh fruits seasonal luxuries and dried fruits valuable trade commodities. Monastic gardens became centers of horticultural innovation and preservation of knowledge. The famous St. Gall monastery plan from around 830 CE recommended specific fruits for monastic orchards. These orchards often doubled as cemeteries, with fruit trees growing over graves, a practical use of space that also carried deep spiritual symbolism about resurrection and eternal life. Wealthy medieval estates featured elaborate orchards as status symbols. Piero de Crescenzi's influential agricultural manual recommended planting fruit trees in organized rows. Plant lines of apples or pears, and in warm places, lines of palms and lemons, or plant lines of mulberries, cherries, plums, and lines of such noble trees as figs, nuts, almonds, quinces, and pomegranates. The spaces between trees were maintained as meadows, mowed twice yearly to maintain beauty. Medieval dietary theory viewed fruits with some suspicion. Physicians worried about their effects on digestion and recommended eating fruits with wine or spices to counteract potential negative effects. However, patients largely ignored these medical warnings, continuing to enjoy seasonal fruits despite professional concerns. Almonds held special significance in medieval cuisine, appearing in 39% of recipes in some medieval cookbooks. They were used to create almond milk, essential during religious fasting periods, as sauce thickeners and as both food and medicine. Medieval physicians could prescribe almonds alongside sugar and hippocras for treating various ailments. The medieval Silk Road facilitated an extensive fruit trade that connected diverse agricultural regions. Archaeological sites in the Pamir Mountains reveal that a millennium ago, Central Asian communities were cultivating apples, many of the same fruits we enjoy today. These trade routes were essential for spreading fruit varieties across continents. Conclusion: from medieval gardens to global markets. The geography of our fruits tells a remarkable story of human migration, trade, agricultural innovation, and cultural exchange spanning millennia. Southeast Asia and the Middle East emerge as particularly important centers of fruit domestication, giving rise to many of our most beloved varieties. Medieval Europeans enjoyed impressive fruit diversity within climatic constraints. Monastic communities served as crucial preservers of horticultural knowledge, developing cultivation techniques and maintaining genetic diversity through careful selection and propagation. However, medieval diets lacked entire categories of fruits we now consider commonplace. No medieval European ever tasted a banana, pineapple, mango, or avocado. The post-Columbian exchange dramatically expanded global fruit diversity, introducing New World species to European cultivation and eventually creating the remarkably diverse fruit selection we enjoy today. Modern fruit production has become increasingly globalized and concentrated, with China emerging as the dominant producer across numerous categories. This represents a fundamental shift from medieval patterns of local and regional fruit cultivation, though the ancient trade routes of the Silk Road demonstrate that international fruit commerce has deep historical roots. As we select fruits from our modern supermarket aisles, we participate in a tradition stretching back thousands of years, one that connects us to medieval monks tending monastery orchards, ancient traders carrying dried fruits across desert routes, and early agricultural pioneers who first recognized the potential of wild plants to sustain human civilization. The next time you bite into an apple, remember the Central Asian mountains where its ancestors first grew. When you enjoy a cherry, consider the Turkish origins that still produce the world's best varieties. And when you taste any citrus fruit, appreciate the complex journey from Southeast Asian forests through medieval Arabic gardens to your modern table. Understanding where our food comes from enriches our appreciation of both the natural world's diversity and humanity's remarkable ability to spread beneficial species across the globe. From ancient origins to medieval cultivation to modern industrial agriculture, the story of our fruits reflects the broader story of human civilization itself.